Irish Rosie's been obsessing over the golden age. She fled the country after Trump won, but he still lives rent-free in her head. Now she denies Trump even won.
Things are getting crazy over there in the US of A. I mean, they've been crazy for months now, right? At least 100 days. If he admits one more time that the election was rigged, I mean, why is he allowed to admit this over and over again and no one does anything about it? It's very obvious that it was. And he keeps saying it because he has like some form of dementia or something that he can't help but tell on himself for what he's done.
Stateside, Democrats are still stewing over the results, too. Amy Klobuchar, who eats salad with a comb, says Democrats would have won the election if they'd nominated anyone but Biden and Harris.
Senator, would the party have had a better chance of winning in 2024 had President Biden dropped out sooner?
You know, everything we look at in a rearview mirror after you lose an election, yes, we would have been served better by a primary.
Most Democrats want Biden zip-tied to a chair in a windowless basement. One insider says this: it's time for Joe Biden to go away, with all due respect, and let the next generation of Democrats take the mantle. Every time he appears on a show or says something, it's just another week or month that we have to defend him and remind everybody that we got beat by Donald Trump again. Democrats aren't just mad at Joe Biden. They want to overthrow the party's whole senior leadership. The party liberals, particularly younger voices in Congress and outside of it, are increasingly disillusioned with how the Democrats' old guard is managing the high-stakes battle against President Trump. Democrats know they have a major credibility issue.
Voters told us two things more than anything in the past election, and I'm going to get a lot of heat for what I'm about to say from my fellow Democrats, but we told people heard from us that people said to us that Joe Biden is too old, and they said that prices are too high. And we said with the power of $2 billion behind us, no, he's not, then yes, he is. And then no, they aren't. Look at this graph of, the stock market or whatever it is. If you tell people not to believe their eyes or their wallets, you're going to lose them.
Besides not lying, Hogg has another way for Democrats to win. Fight for your rights to party.
Young people should be able to focus on what young people should be focused on, which is how to get laid and how to go and have fun.
Nothing gets you laid easier than wearing a mask on a date and making the girl pay, and then afterwards asking her consent to make a move. Hogg's idea is to nominate Hunter Biden. Same policies as his dad, just different lifestyle. Whoever Democrats nominate, Jasmine, not to be confused with Davy Crockett, says the fix is already in.
It is this fear that the people within the party, within the primary system, will have about voting for a woman, because every time we voted for a woman, we've lost so far. And I think that that's a natural fear because we just want to win. So there's a lot of people that are like, you know what? Like, let's go find the safest white boy we can find. I can tell you that there is one specific candidate. I had a donor on the phones with me telling me that all the donors are lining up behind that candidate. So I can tell, and I can tell you it's not a black person nor woman, okay?
I bet she's talking about Gavin. But Democrats haven't had a lot of luck with women. They're 0 for 2. If I were a donor, I'd put my money on a man too. No matter who the Democrats go with, they're in for a rude awakening. The party spent the last decades demonizing America, and now the base wants to flee the country like Irish Rosie.
This is a serious problem for Democrats. Less than 1 in 4 Democrats under 30 say they're proud to be an American. 54% say they're embarrassed by it. You have no perspective. Is America perfect? No, of course not. No country is. But the U.S. is leagues ahead of the rest of the world on most of the progressive issues that are important to young people. America has 14 million women-owned businesses. 17% of black women are starting businesses, which is faster than white women or white men. Gay Americans are free to marry, and 49% of them own property. Yes, in America, gays buy buildings. In other places, they get thrown off them.
Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk is here. All right, Charlie, so Hogg says don't lie to voters, just help them get laid and have fun.
How nihilistic, and also how dismissive of all the concerns that young people are feeling right now. The Democrats the last couple of years, and Hogg is half right about this, they have lost young people, especially young men. When I go to these college campuses, though, they don't just want to have more degeneracy or debauchery. They're looking for something greater, something higher. They're in the pursuit of something good and true and beautiful. Remember, if you're on a college campus right now, the very young people that we at Turning Point USA are winning over, large in part thanks to President Trump, you suffered under the lies and the deception of COVID, of wearing a mask while you shower, of the 9th booster shot, of the hyper-policing of every pronoun and every syllable that you say. And they want something greater than that, not something darker and something that is rooted in a cynical worldview. And David Hogg is so dismissive of young people that want to have a mission, that want to have meaning, that don't just want to pursue what makes them feel good, but instead young people increasingly want to do good. This is also why we're seeing young people go back to church. According to Axios, a story just a couple days ago, church attendance is going up large in part thanks to young Gen Z men. David Hogg is selling a very dark worldview, and we are going to embrace one that lifts people up and one that is rooted in eternal principle.
Yeah, I've seen the pews have been packed. And I don't go to church as often as Charlie, but when I have been going, I've been noticing, and they're packed with a lot of younger people. Now, you are the safest white boy we have on Fox. You're not as safe as the guy they're talking about, though. They're talking about Newsom. Jasmine Crockett, not to be confused with Davey, say the donors have already coalesced around, we assume, Gavin Newsom. He's the safest, whitest bet. Is that a good bet?
I don't know, but if someone could explain to me what Gavin Newsom is always doing with his hands, that would be very helpful. There's something, when I went on his podcast, it's very disorienting. It's very confusing.
It's got a lot of Walls vibes there. They both have like very frisky hands.
Yeah, there's something wrong about this whole kind of like, are you feeling me? It's a little bizarre, but they're so obsessed with tribal racial identity politics. And understand, what was their mission that they were selling to the American people back this last election? That we're going to flood your country with unvetted foreigners, that we're going to mutilate kids, that we're going to worship criminals, and that we're going to demonize half the population for simply breathing and existing. It's not about the candidate that they will select in 2028 or even the midterms in 2026. It's the principles and the mission behind it. And unfortunately, David Hogg, being the vice chair of the DNC, is giving us a preview. The Democrats are going to continue to embrace one of despair and darkness and decline. And we as conservatives will be the optimistic, positive vision for the country led by President Trump's daily results that we are seeing for the American people.
There's a quote that I'm about to butcher, so please forgive me. It's Nietzsche, and he says, when there's no war, warlike men will make war on their own country, will make war on themselves. Right. Do you think a subsection of the Democratic Party is actually at war with the country?
Without a doubt, and it pains me to say that, but when Democrats would prioritize their political and legislative energy towards Abrego Kilmar Garcia, who was without a doubt a foreigner who should not be here illegally, an MS-13 gang member, and they would not even mention an utterance about the suffering of the American people. They'll go to a foreign country to try to get a foreigner back to our own country. It makes you wonder, who are they actually fighting for? That's one example of multiple of how their agenda is against the American people. And it pains me to say that. I want to see a Democrat Party that will actually applaud President Trump for taking on big pharma companies. Where's Bernie Sanders? This was a major thing he's always talked about. Did he even compliment President Trump for this? I want to see a Democrat Party that wants borders. I want to see a Democrat Party that wants peace, not a Democrat Party that's at war with the country.
All right. Safe white boy, Charlie Kirk, great to talk to you. Have a great night. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.